Broadcasting from Salisbury University campus, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7. Putting Delmarva first. Stay tuned for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
It's hurricane season again, and Delmarva has been spared so far, but it has been sending some relief to Florida and Texas. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Some $70,000 has been raised by the Community Foundation, the Eastern Shore, to help out the victims of Hurricanes Harvey in Texas and Irma in Florida. So far, Delmarva has been spared, although it has seen some flooding by hurricanes such as Sandy and Isabel. But the storms are getting stronger. In our studio this morning is State Senator Jim Mathias, who also served as mayor of Ocean City, so he knows the tribulations of the weather firsthand. We'll be talking with him about relief efforts and other issues that face the nation. Welcome to the program.
Absolutely. Well, Don, it's a pleasure. Good seeing you again. Thanks for having me.
So, let's talk about relief efforts. I know you mentioned that you were involved with some relief efforts and out of Delmarva. Tell me a little bit about what's going on here. I mentioned the fact that some $70,000, probably more now, has been going down to relief in some of those areas.
Well, let's talk first about private sector, because that's what I do. You know, Maryland is a citizen legislature, so in addition to our public service work, it always is good when you got a job. you got to pay the rent. You got to get the groceries. And I've worked for Rural Plus Incorporated from Snow Hill for 12 years. And my experience, you've already tapped into it a little bit, being the mayor of Ocean City. We're very hurricane prone. And so we had a strong emergency operations plan. They got a great team now, great emergency manager, and all, as they say, all emergency management is local. So as a result of that, the owner of Rural Plus, Matt Oduchowski, reached out to me several years ago. I've been working with him for 12 years, and I bring my experience of pre-planning and all, going away to the different conventions, integrating. I do logistics now. I've been working with the Florida Emergency Management Center, the EOC down in the Keys, Monroe County. I do a lot of things. You know, as you well know, there could be curfews that are installed and all. And as our crews are back there, we do largely industrial and commercial restoration work, government buildings, strip shopping centers, hospitals and the like, and we get the community back on its feet. So we're there now. We have the full array of generation, supplemental heating, water removal, drying and the like, remediation to prevent any kind of mold. Now, while all that's going on, I want to say thank you to Community Foundation and all back home for the good work that they're doing. There's a lady by the name of Christina Fortner that on her own accord, she's had a 48-foot trailer down in front of Home Depot out in West Ocean City, as you know, where it is on Route 50. She's completely filled that trailer up with water, diapers, non-perishables, and all the essentials of life to prepare to send down either into Texas or Florida. She reached out to me, and she just got the last bit of donation goods, and right now we're working on finding that tractor head to pull that down. Now, you know, those tractor trailers only get about 6 miles to a gallon of diesel, and the further south you go, the more expensive the diesel has become because of supply. And we watch, I think the Governor Scott of Florida has done a great job, I have to say, preparing his citizenry and all, and getting that fuel supply in there. But the further down you go, so let's just say an average diesel, gallon of diesel is about $3, and they get about 6 miles to the gallon. You can do the math. It's a couple $1,000s to get a tractor down there and back home again. So we're currently, whereas we have the supplies, we're now looking for that last piece to get that tractor head. So we're down there in a private sector fashion. We're down there in a public sector. Again, you've talked about Community Foundation, but when I was the mayor, we had a disaster recovery team, a public service team, that when we were stable here in Ocean City, we went out to our neighbors. We worked in a number of hurricanes, Wrightsville Beach, for example. And not only did we go out and recover La Plata from the tornado, not only did we go out and recover our neighbors, but you know what? From a public works perspective, we learned. We learned in the trench when your wastewater went down, when your water supply went down. And we were able to take our the men and women of Public Works and go there and bring them back up. So not only did we learn, but we helped our fellow man. So that's what we're doing here. Private sector, public outreach and the like. So that's been my life for the last 12 years. And I was the mayor in Ocean City from 96 until 06, and subsequently I've been in the General Assembly. But I do want to say one more thing. I want to thank Fish Powell, my predecessor, Mayor Fish Powell. He is the greatest. I learned from him, and Fish, his greatest days, he'll tell you, he was fire chief of Ocean City. And when I first met him, I went to his home. The fire chiefs wear that white helmet, and they got that white jacket. And when I went into his home, he has that portrait of him chomped down on a cigar. And I sat with him through many a hurricane forecast. I knew, though, we were going to be okay until, if he got that cigar out, I knew that we had something to worry about. But I learned from Fish. I learned at his right hand. Mayor Meehan now does a great job, his EOC people there. So I'm very pleased with our folks here. We got bridge calls on the Eastern Shore, Delmarva bridge calls, where all of us were all prone. You know what happened to Sandy. I was down in Crisfield. We were told that Sandy was coming right at us in Ocean City. It took that little deflection, came in north, and we got the backside. I was down there with the mayor at the time for a couple of days, and I was 5 years ago come this month.
That's right. That's right. Let me ask you this. In terms of Ocean City, the storms seem to be getting much stronger. I don't know their more frequency. We obviously have climate change, which is heating of both the ocean and the air itself. That means that some of the hurricanes and some of the storms that you're going to be experiencing in the future in Ocean City are probably going to be more dramatic. And you have that compounded, obviously, with sea level rise. I've been out, in Ocean Pines and some of the areas there where you can see where the water is really almost flush with some of the houses in terms of their backyards. You can see the bulkheads and so on. What do you see the future in terms of Ocean City and that what seems to be like an ever increasing amount of storm surge, climate change, more storms? I mean, is there something that can be done?
Clearly, we've done it, but let's talk honestly here. We've done it with beach replenishment. What we did with beach replenishment in Ocean City, we actually built the beach seaward. Not only the beach, landside beach, but we raised the elevation of the floor to take that energy out of those waves. In addition, in 1985 when Hurricane Gloria struck Ocean City, we didn't have beach replenishment. The ocean was into the foundations of the buildings up in the mid and north part of the town. And when Gloria came in, it broke up pieces of that boardwalk on the south end, rafted them and threw them into the buildings. Phillips Beach Plaza, for example. So the very first thing we learned was beach replenishment and to fortify your community, number one. Now, number two, let's be honest. I was reading about reinsurance, and we're not going to have a lesson on reinsurance, but I was reading the Wall Street Journal. These reinsurance companies are flush with money, and what they are, they're bigger insurance companies that insurance companies turn to for large loss. They were flush with money because really we haven't had many big storms. We had that 2004, 2005 time when we were really involved in it. And of course we had Sandy, but until really this year again, and we've had these back-to-back Category 5 storms, multiple storms in the basin. So what I'm saying is you have to look at it, but I believe in science. I believe in climate change. I believe, honestly, that man has had a profound effect on our environment, and I really don't think I'm big on renewable energy and all the things, our carbon footprint, and I could talk to you about that as well if you would like to, those efforts in the 10 years I've been voting for renewable energy, but I believe we have to be attentive. And, I believe that this is happening. I believe that we can fortify it. We can, in different ways, the Army Corps. I'm not an engineer, but I looked at the engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers and all, and they will help us, but we have to be sensitive. Whatever we can do to cut these emissions, to make certain as we've gone in types of renewable energy, are increasing the mileage in our automobiles, the daily factor, whatever we can do to mitigate that daily factor of emissions. I think in the long term, I just had my first grandchild. My daughter had her first child, my first grandchild born 7 months ago, Christian Alexander. I want Christian to enjoy that same Ocean City that I was able to enjoy. But it's going to be my responsibility, Lauren, my daughter's responsibility, Christian's responsibility to see the reality through science, to understand the engineers when they're explaining it to us, and you can see. Now, when we average it all out at the end, the drought of hurricanes in the late 2000s and the onset now, we'll have to look at that. But you have to be prepared. But remember, let's go back to emergency management. All emergency management is local. You make sure as a citizen you have a great relationship with your local government. They do outreach with public access TV and all. Your locals reach out to your county reaches out to the state, and your state reaches out to the federal. And you need that relationship. And I've worked with every element of it in hurricane recovery, hurricane forecast.
Then the other night, as a matter of fact, Congressman Andy Harris held a presentation, I guess it was, on healthcare. He's certainly made his position clear about favoring perhaps more money shifting to the states, repeal perhaps of the Affordable Care Act. First of all, what was your own reaction to his presentation? But what are your concerns about what Congress is looking at in terms of healthcare reform, particularly as it could affect Maryland?
Well, first of all, I welcomed Congressman to the district, and I was happy to see him there. And I work well with him when I can work well with him. He worked with us in Ocean City. Talk about it for a moment. There were some errors in the FEMA flood maps and all, which cost significantly the insured up on that mid-north end of town. So I thank him there. I know he works closely with our agriculture industry and commercial watermen. I thank him there. Now, let's turn to the topic at hand. We had an hour-long presentation last night at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, the pharmacy school, and I thank them. But we did, I think it was titled, The State of Healthcare in the United States of America. We did that in 37 minutes. We've been discussing the Affordable Care Act and arguing over the Affordable Care Act since it was passed in 2010. There's been an attempt to repeal it over 50 times. The Supreme Court of America has declared it as legal, invalid. And there's hundreds of thousands of people and tens of thousands of Eastern Shore people that are dependent on the subsidies and all that it brings. I lost my late wife to cancer. Early detection, number one in any disease. Being insured affords you the opportunity. Now, as I raised the question last night, not in an argumentative way, quite frankly, I've been working with some people, and as a preface to the question, I said, when I was on the city council and I was the mayor, my sphere of responsibility was this big. When I went up to the General Assembly, now it's much bigger, and I'm certain in the federal government it's extreme, international, national issues and the like, the full perspective. I said last night that you have analysts, the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, that when these bills, even with the best of intentions, are presented, oh yeah, you might be saving money here and shifting money there, but there are people that are going to be losing coverage. There is going to be a profound change in how things are done. Do I think that the Affordable Care Act was absolute best? I subscribe to this. Don't let the perfect stand in the way of the good. Surely. But I think, as you heard me suggest last night, I think that Congressman Harris is intelligent enough, he's clearly experienced enough, that he can cause a roundtable, as I suggested last night, and bring folks together. Why should an American be with a disability? Why should an American with a pre-existing condition? Why should an American family with a young person that is now covered today, allowed to be standing, why should they be in anxiety that they have to suffer in the way that they've suffered it for the last number of years, let alone this summer? And I said I applauded Senator John McCain. I believe he's an American hero. My late wife's dad was a Korea and Vietnam veteran and all. And when I stayed up until 2:30 in the morning watching that night. And when he came in and went thumbs down, I knew he did the right thing for Americans. Do I think it can be improved? Yes. So the short answer to the question is, now we have another bill. As you know, the rules have been suspended until September 30th, that a 50-vote count will be able to make changes versus a 60-vote count. And it appears to be a rush now to make these dramatic changes, which again is going to mean less coverage. These block grants that you're talking about, I think these block grants will probably be reduced as you go forward. And I heard an interesting remark last night, respectfully to the congressman. He said that he thought it was best that healthcare be in the hands of local government. Hey, I believe in local government and local control. But we have the Maryland Exchange, if you recall. And I'm on the Committee of Jurisdiction and Senate Finance. And when I voted for that, I was criticized for voting for it by some of my friends from the opposing party. And if we think we can't have it both ways, Don. I said then when I voted, because I knew it was contentious, our congressman then, Frank Cradaville, he was daggone if he did and daggone if he didn't. It was a very difficult time in our national economy, but I knew when I cast my vote for the Maryland Exchange that I wanted to make sure that you, our listeners as fellow Marylanders, had my representation in Maryland to best provide them. That exchange didn't get off to an easy start, but the fact of the matter is, if we're going to talk about local control, respectfully, as you heard last night, then let's live local control. We can't be opposed to it in 2010 and 12 and for it in 2017, but I am open-minded enough to believe that we learn as we go. So I'm confident that the congressman, in his enlightenment, by the way, he's a doctor.
All right.
And he understands, he looks in the eyes of the patients. He understands the fear that they feel and the worry that they have if they think they're going to lose their health insurance. All this is over individual market, by the way. You heard my question there.
Right.
The individual market. When we're talking about these spikes of 50 and 60% of premiums, which are unaffordable, I'll be very honest. And a young person will walk away from paying that kind of money, absolutely, because they believe that they're going to be healthier and invincible. But that's only a small portion of the entire insured market. I believe that we can work this out if we come together. We've had bigger challenges in our country, and certainly none that have been as more sustained and as polarized as this one is. So I send my best to the congressman and in a collaborative way, and I'm certain that he's got the intelligence to make this work.
I want to turn, by the way, to offshore wind.
Yes.
That's certainly a concern in Ocean City. I know the city has been concerned particularly about visibility. Where are you on putting those things out there? Is the city going to go along with it? Are they far enough out? What's your feeling about that?
All right. Well, now there's a mouthful there. We can do a program just on that.
I'm sure.
We'll do a history. Energy, utilities. I'm on the Committee of Jurisdiction, Senate
Right.
Finance. We debated that bill probably 2 years before we brought it out in bill fashion. The first year I was a sponsor of the bill. Second year I wasn't. There was concerns about how far off of Assateague and the crossings and all preserving Ocean City. And once we thought we had all that worked out, I was a sponsor of the bill year 3, which the bill passed. I strongly support offshore wind. I believe, until recent, just before the Public Service Commission hearing, that when the town of Ocean City spoke, and respectfully they said 10 or 12 miles, we made sure that we had that. We protected the landings down in Assateague. Largely, I thought that everybody was reasonably happy. And as they started the public hearings before they went to the Public Service Commission, all of a sudden one of the U.S. Wind brought some photos that I had never seen in 5 years. That if you took a look at those photos, they look like they were right there. Now, let's take a pause for a moment. I understand the mayor's position. I'm not to quarrel with the mayor as a former mayor. I can understand some of the large hoteliers and the like that feel that perhaps their patrons, when they get up in the morning and they want to see that sunrise, if in fact that sunrise is blocked or shadowed or compromised by this, I could see where that would be a concern. Now, quite frankly, I'll tell you something very quick narrative. I'm walking down the boardwalk right after the Public Service Commission approved both of the applicants, both the one that's offshore of Ocean City and one that's to the northeast of Ocean City, and a very conservative hotelier that I served in the fire company with came out on the porch and said, "Senator," I said, "Good morning, Billy. How are you?" He said, "Fine." I want to talk to you about this offshore wind. And I said, yes, sir. And I really thought that it was going to be critical and worrisome. He's had a hotel, the Majestic, downtown in Ocean City, forever. And I thought I was preparing myself to hear a constituent's point of view. He said, I like this. He said, well, what I would like for you to do is suggest to the mayor and council to get on a boat, go offshore 12 miles, 15 miles, and see the perspective. Have them talk to the applicant, and perhaps the applicant will be able to afford them a charter to take you offshore. Now, I'm not a meteorologist. I know enough to get in trouble with these hurricanes on the back of a napkin. But the fact of the matter is, there is fog and there is humidity, and there's days where it is very clear, say November. It may be perhaps December when it's a crisp, clear morning. There are a good portion of the days where a variety of other things would perhaps shroud them. Is 22 miles the right number of miles? Again, our congressman of the 1st District has put in an amendment. He's on the House Appropriations Committee, and he seems to think, with people that he talked to, that 22 miles is the right distance where you won't be able to see them from Ocean City. I think that, first of all, it's the right thing to do. I am not going to argue with the hoteliers in Ocean City. They've got their whole life vested there, generations vested there. I do believe in renewable energy. I think there's a good strike compromise. They've been respectfully doing this in Europe and other places. Block Island is the Northeast company. Deepwater, I think they've changed their name since. It was the first U.S. company. They just went online within the last year. I think this can be done. Respectfully, I believe in it. But to have an arm wrestling contest about the tourism and an adverse effect, if it's really sadly going to be that adverse, I would have to say, look at our economy. Our local economy is tourism driven, and I can't put that in jeopardy. Number one, I do believe in it. I think we can get it right the same way I talked about health care and health insurance. I think we can get that right. So it's, as they say, quote, to be continued. And I have good friends in both houses of Congress, both Senators Cardin and Van Hollen. I've worked with them very closely. We just got appropriations. We're having that trouble with shoaling down in the inlet. We had 3 meetings this summer, and we were able, with the Army Corps, to get some money we found last week. We're bringing that dredge in the first early October. And but most importantly, we've been able to provide a voice for that commercial harbor and that charter bird harbor, that they know that they've got their electeds working for them. So we're working on a variety of issues. That's what this is all about. Not only is emergency management everything local, but all your government is A, it's local, and B, it's collaborative through all realms of government.
Let me turn, by the way, to these large chicken houses. Just recently, there was a hearing about one that was planned for here in Salisbury. 10 chicken houses, been reduced from about 12. But there was a turnout. People are still concerned about placing that thing there. I know the Maryland Department of Environment held a hearing, indications they might go ahead and say it's okay. But putting aside the scientific studies, just the experience of people who've lived near these, I've talked to some of them who say it's awful. Forget about whether or not it's good or bad for your health. What is your concerns? I mean, how is one to, say, strike a balance? Because I know a number of residents say the proposal or the regulations, for instance, that's proposed by the poultry industry, they don't go far enough. And this is not, by the way, an issue of whether or not we should have large chicken houses. It's where they should be put. And these are residents. These are not people coming from the Western Shore.
That's local zoning. I
Right.
mean, that's local zoning.
Does it concern you? I mean, that these houses are out there that, for people who've been here a long time, I saw people, for instance, in I think it was Worcester County, there were Trump voters. They're not people, hanging out, and they're concerned.
Well, first of all, let's talk about this. Okay. With all due respect, the saying, not in my backyard. Now, I moved here to the shore 45 years ago. And when I was coming down Route 50 or wherever it was, and I got my first good whiff of a chicken house, I said, wow, what is that? Or manure that was in the field. And when I started asking questions, and I said, what does that smell? And they say, hey, to a farmer, that's the smell of money. Now, again, I just talked about our industry, our cornerstone industry being tourism. Agriculture is a cornerstone industry here. Now, clearly, I really truly believe that our number one environmental steward is our farmer. They're not going to foul that land, number one. Number two, you touched on it, local zoning and all, agricultural zoning, residential zoning. And there are people that love to live in the country and have gone out and have located out in the country, but have chosen to locate in an agricultural area.
Let me just stop you there, because the concern is not so much, as people I talk to are concerned about this, residents, it's not that they don't want chicken houses. Is it that these are new phenomenon that have kind of moved in, that seem to be much more imposing its smell and problems than, say, the older chicken houses. I mean, it's a matter of magnitude that's altered the equation, because they say, oh, we're fine with poultry, and because we know. I mean, and to say that, well, you knew when you moved that it was agriculture. As I said to somebody from the chicken industry, that seems a bit cold too.
Well, it may be, respectfully, a hollow argument, maybe or maybe not. But let's talk about what you raised. You've talked about these, quote, larger homes, larger houses, or more density houses. But I could say to you, just like everything else, there is a more quality of life in raising these chickens. There's a more humane side, just because the home, and I'm not the spokesman for the poultry industry, but I could tell you I have to represent them vigorously, as well as the agriculture industry, as well as our everyday people who are looking to protect their quality of life. But these larger houses in times does not mean necessarily more chickens inside or a larger turnover. But I will say this, that the issue now is now turning on air quality, air emissions, what is emitted on the big fans and out and can get out into the waterways. Look, I clearly support that debate. I would like to see that debate be with our integrators. You know, look, you cannot rationalize anything, but you walk into the hospital here, you walk into our Salisbury University, and you look at our large infrastructures that have been provided by Purdue and other companies. This is what we do here on the Eastern Shore. Again, we can find a balance. So, you know, I support the poultry industry. I believe in brokering dialogue. With all due respect, I don't want to go back. The Maryland Coastal Bays, they brokered a great, I think, compromised relationship with developers and farmers and the like. And then all of a sudden, unfortunately, that Hudson lawsuit came, which was devastating to that Hudson family. And it seems, sadly, that there was a polarization. People retreated to their corners. And now the trust factor is, I'm not going to say it's gone, but it's been diminished. So you asked me how I feel about it. Some of my colleagues in the Maryland Senate that bring these very onerous bills against the poultry industry, I asked them respectfully, when was the last time that you were on a chicken farm on the Eastern Shore? And honestly, they say, I've never been. Well, come down. You know, it's like me putting in a bill against the tech industry or a National Institute of Health, you know, because of some medical waste that it's found itself astray. So it's a reality, just like climate change is a reality. I believe it's a reality, and I think our first answer is our local zoning, and then a cooperative dialogue with regards to perhaps finding some kind of air monitoring situation. But I think that it's as the industry is developing.
Well, we were speaking with State Senator Jim Mathias, who was stopped by our studios this morning. Appreciate talking about all kinds of issues, everything from chicken houses to offshore wind farm to hurricanes. That's right.
Sometimes those chicken houses cause hurricanes.
Well, we want to get into that one, do we? Look, we appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you, Don, and to our listeners. There's fall's coming. It's going to be a great time. Please reach out. We're going back into session the second Wednesday in January. We're there for 90 days. We're there representing our citizens, which is the best. We've done a lot of good work, and we got a lot of great work yet to do. Thank you for having us this morning. I look to come back.
Okay, we'll do. This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Production and audio engineering by Chris Frank. Hosted by Don Rush. For podcasts, visit delmarvapublicradio.net or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on Pack 14.